what we're here for, you're in the wrong place. I am Maggie. I'm one of the co-hosts, along with Linus and Shen, who you might have met coming in, and Geoffrey, who is somewhere. And we pulled this together quite quickly, but we're really glad that this worked out and you were all able to come. Here's a little bit of the format of how this is going to work. We have had a bunch of people submit video demos online. If you have submitted a demo, it is very likely we're going to call your name up. And what we're going to do is you're going to play your demo for 1 or 2 minutes, however long your demo is, and you can talk into the mic and explain what is happening on your screen. And then we're going to take a couple questions. If you submitted a demo or you have a demo with you on your laptop and you do not get called up, afterwards, after we're done with the main stage demos, we're going to do a demo fair, which means you can kind of set up around the room, just show people casually your demo, take questions a little bit more if everyone else can circulate and see what we have going on. There's also going to be pizza after we do main stage demos. So if you're hungry, that's happening. I'm now going to hand over to Linus, who's going to talk a little bit about the work that Notion's doing on AI.
Thanks, Maggie. This is amazing. Thank you all for coming. I don't live in San Francisco. I live in New York, and in New York, the AI events are cool, but it's like, you know, kind of your friends here, and then you go to the other event, and it's like mostly the same people, and it's cozy. But here, obviously, you're great to see lots of fresh faces and people interested in talking about UX for AI beyond the text box. I'm only sort of tangentially going to talk about Notion. I wanted to actually talk about kind of like, when I talk to people, a lot of folks ask me why I ended up here or how I ended up here. So before joining Notion earlier this year, I worked for about a year as kind of like an independent tinkerer, explorer, unemployed person, whatever you want to call it. I think Brett Victor calls it his like traveling hobo period. And I spent a year exploring the sort of basic question of there's a lot of information in the world. We have this new emerging thing called AI that we can use to take advantage of to try to help people understand and produce information more efficiently. And I spent a lot of time exploring different kind of interfaces for highlighting and structuring and helping people navigate text. And one of my key takeaways from that year was that we have to go beyond just staring at walls of text and prompting. And when I think of going beyond the text box, I think of things like the importance of collaboration. When you're working on a team and you're working across the internet with an open source team of people or with a loose collaboration of people, being able to collaborate in that same way with AI, I think is really important. I also think of building more structured workspaces that help you understand content and workspaces that understand what you're putting into it in smarter ways than just sort of raw piles of text to help you organize it and work through it. And I think of obviously knowledge. Knowledge in your wikis, knowledge in your documents, knowledge in your bookmarks, everything that you're consuming and you're producing, and somehow being able to understand and connect that together. And for me, going beyond the text box is thinking about richer versions of this, right? So you have the standard ChatGPT metaphor, which is sort of like input and then output. But one of the things that really excited about Notion is already this very rich workspace that has metaphors like blocks and databases that give you enough structure for the computer to be able to both understand your content better and for you to be able to communicate things back to the computer, but not so much structure that you're constrained. So there's this interesting middle ground where there's enough structure, but also unstructuredness for the language model to be able to help you understand content that's unstructured. So, so I think chat has a place. It's everywhere. But I'm really excited to see today all of the things that think about, there are all these other kinds of materials that we have in software, things like blocks, but also things like text itself is a kind of a material if you think about it. It's such a critical part of basically every single interface. Things like Canvas interfaces, things like real-time presence with people. How do we stitch these things together to be able to help people collaborate with AI in more interesting ways? And I don't have anything I'm going to demo today on behalf of Notion or myself, but I think that's because we're really early. Like you look at these charts and these charts go like this, right? But then if you actually zoom out, this is probably like the first 2% of what we're going to see over the next year and the next 5 years and 10 years. And when we're that early, maybe you look for ChatGPT. For me, when we're that early and I'm looking for ideas, I look for serendipity. I look for other people like yourselves that have thought in all kinds of interesting ways, and I try to collide them and bring them together. And that serendipity, I think, can yield some really interesting collisions of ideas and directions and new directions that I would not have thought of myself. And so I'm excited to welcome everyone here. I'm also, I think, somewhat obligated to say that Notion is hiring for people thinking about AI, thinking about new interfaces. If you have ML experience, if you have just full stack web experience, but if you're interested in building AI products, if you have opinions about any of these things, I would love to talk to you. We have some Notion people in the audience also. If you want to raise your hand, talk to these people. If you don't know who they are, come to me. I will connect you with these people who are also thinking a lot about AI and interfaces, and they're also just fantastic thinkers about interface design. So welcome to the space, welcome to the event, and hopefully we all walk out with new ideas and new friends. Thanks for coming.
Okay, give us just 1 second while we figure out who's first, and I figure out how to use this laptop. Okay, and not, oh, show the right view. There we go. Okay, Alex, can we get Alex up here? Yeah. Okay, oh, I'm just gonna pause this for a second. Hi. Okay. Stand right there.
Okay.
And then tell us what we're...
Okay, so this is a mind mapping tool. This is a mind mapping tool. You can get ideas, connects to chat or OpenAI. You'll see here, just kind of doing some thinking. I like these ideas. Don't like that one. Pulling some more things together here. You can add your own ideas and then build off those as well. Okay. And then here you'll see selecting a bunch of ideas and then interacting with the chat interface again. And then this takes some time because it's thinking. So what we're trying here is to shorten the time from innovation to creation. And that's it.
Can we stay up for 1 second? Do we have 1 or 2 questions? Does anyone have any questions for Alex? Yep.
We have a hierarchy that goes, what are we doing to ensure that ideas don't conflict? Every time you click get ideas, we follow the hierarchy back to the root node. There could be some conflicts with sibling ideas. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Alvin, do we have Alvin here?
What if you could do SEO smarter?
Make sure you stand on the carpet.
Okay, you should probably mute it. Oh, that's fine. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm going to demo this little side project called Product Studio. It's kind of like a tool for, I would say, fashion and physical product design exploration. It combines a 3D editor with Stable Diffusion, so you can kind of frame a product shot using a camera in a 3D environment. And then the tool will render out a depth map that then is sent to Stable Diffusion to condition, fix the structure of the image that's being generated. So once you're sort of happy with the setup, you can construct your prompt, click generate, and then in the side panel here, you'll start to see some results that have the same structure, but like has a different look based on your prompt and seed and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the demo. Sorry, can you? I didn't hear that.
So like, how do you edit the stuff after you generate the first version?
The edit the stuff. Do you mean the prompt or the scene?
Well, just you generate, a bunch of versions, and then you're like, oh, I want to tweak this little part. How does that work?
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the tool would need to have basically like in an interface where you maybe can do some in-painting and that kind of stuff as well on the image that's being generated. Right now, you're just getting basically the raw frames out of Stable Diffusion based on the depth map. And so I guess you could kind of download it and take it into Photoshop or another tool. But yeah, you could definitely imagine adding that as well to the tool.
Yeah, question on my end. I spent a bit less time in generative images, but how does that approach compare with like ControlNet and some of the things that we've been able to see there? Is it actually using that, or is it a different approach? Why one versus the other?
That's a good question. So I made this before ControlNet came out a couple of months ago. And so this is only using the depth condition Stable Diffusion 2.0. Depth is one of the channels that ControlNet supports, but you could imagine also having edge detection, normal maps, that kind of stuff. So it would be pretty easy to add ControlNet here. I just haven't done it yet. And it's just a side project. Oh, it is.
Okay, great. Amelia. Okay, stand over there. All right.
Hey everybody, I'm Amelia. I didn't know we were doing video demos, so I sent a random video. Okay, so this is a side project I'm working on, just kind of noodling on ideas that I don't get to do for work. Demoing the logo over here. But it's basically, one of the things behind this is a lot of the demos we see are generating text. And that is what these models are really good at, but I'm really curious about how we can move beyond generating text. I feel like one of the things we end up doing is we go into like TikTok mode where we're like just ingesting a lot of content. And I'm curious, like, how can we build interfaces so that we think harder and not less hard? So in here, we stop looking at this stupid logo. If you can see over, so at the top, there's like, okay, so one of the things I keep repeating is prompts are basically just pieces of context. So if you think about what people put into a Midjourney prompt, they're like, I want a scene, I want it to be this kind of scene, I want this kind of thing in it, I want it in this style. Thanks, Maggie. And like every piece there is a bit of context, right? And we're forcing users to kind of type that out every single time. So for a writing app, let's add some affordances. So at the top, there's like, who am I? What kind of writing is this? What should it feel like? Who are your inspirations? And then it's asking for different types of suggestions. So if you look over on the right, you're good at this. You can see like, these are like, so I was talking to someone who used to be a writing tutor, and I was talking to them about, how do you coach people? How do you critique their work? How do you teach them to be better writers? And so here it's just sending a prompt. It's using the ChatGPT endpoint in the background, and it's saying, can you add general suggestions or suggestions for improving the flow? Or there's one that's say things I did well. I think that's not something we see enough, which is like, give me a compliment. That would be nice. So the green ones are like praise for your writing. There's like related concepts. So this is like brainstorming with people. You know, what does this remind you of? I find that really useful when I talk about what I'm working on with people. And then the rest of the stuff here is stuff I like to rant about. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? Put your hand up if we're getting mic. Sir.
So the information at the top, the type of writing, who are you, etc., is that created by the user or is that output by the GPT?
Yeah, good question. So that is fixed within this interface. There's also potentially the concept of like, once you have these primitives, how can you let the user customize it? So like for the types of suggestions, like can they add their own types of suggestions? Like I want suggestions that make the flow better, or I'm really bad at this and I want to get better at it. But for now, they're just fixed.
Really awesome.
Thanks.
For where?
Yeah, I was just curious. It'd be nice maybe if I could describe my audience, for example. You know, maybe it's a technical audience or a very experienced or an inexperienced audience, and kind of because I often have trouble kind of initially visualizing my audience. And it'd be nice to kind of just write in one style and then say, hey, how would a technical audience receive this or something along those lines. But I really like this idea. I was just curious about if you've kind of thought about the other side of that.
I really like that. One of the most fun things with building this is who are your inspirations? Like it takes it a little bit too literally. Like I did a demo before and it had like Dr. Seuss and it like Dr. Seussified everything in a very unhelpful way. But I like that who's your audience question as well.
So as someone who's always curious about improving the quality of my thinking, I can't help but notice this related concepts category. And I wonder, have you been using this for creative brainstorming or criticizing the assumptions behind text or coming up with high quality contradictions? Like, could this basically be used to think more effectively?
Yeah, I like that. They're pretty bad right now, actually. They're like, there's like a sad sentence and it's like, have you heard of nihilism? It's like, okay. But I kind of want to hook it up to like Wikipedia. Like there are, so who was it? Quora has a chatbot where one of their options is connected to, I think, Wikipedia concepts. So like there are databases of concepts out there where they're like pretty comprehensive. So like, can you connect it to that kind of structured knowledge base and do a search over that and then link out to real sources? So I think there's so much behind that.
Okay, next up is Apoorva. Sorry, I butchered your name.
Okay, so I kind of started working on this 2 days ago, so it's very raw. But I've been really inspired by this. This is the table of contents in a textbook that I was reading. And I think that's really cool because most education materials that you come across is actually like the one on the left, where it's like linear. It tells you everything you need to know about a subject, kind of is made for a certain person. It basically assumes what your prerequisites. And that's not how actually learning works. It's more like this, where like you're trying to find just the concepts that you need to know based on your goals or your current knowledge. And you're trying to skip in around and you're skipping around trying to find exactly the stuff that you need to know to learn something. So this is something that I hacked up. So let's say I want to learn about generalized linear models, which is actually a common concept in stats. And I don't know where to start. So this is going to tell you all the prerequisite concepts that you need to know before you learn generalized linear models and how they're related to each other. And I think that's, and then it's also going to give you resources for where you can actually learn them. And yeah, and you can also, if you already know something, you can like mark them as ticked. So you can only focus on the stuff that you don't know. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
Questions? We'll bring you the mic.
How did you construct the graph? Is it like semantically trying to correlate concepts, or is it hard coded, or just in the first place, the graph of dependencies?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's right now just asking ChatGPT to find what concepts depend on each other. It's like getting the prerequisite concept or something. But I'm also working on basically scrapping all the textbook table of contents and making it more accurate.
Any others? Okay. Divya, I'm very sorry, I'm bad with names. You here? Going once, going twice. Okay, Geoffrey's definitely here.
Hey everyone, ignore the little me in the corner. I'll talk over this. So actually, yeah. Okay, let me give a little preamble before this starts. So what I've been exploring is how can we integrate AI as part of a larger computational medium that people can use to make personal software tools. And so I've been running some experiments where last summer I worked with some folks, including Paul Shen, who's here, to build this thing called Potluck, which I'll show you now. Where the idea is it's kind of like a notes app where you can just type stuff. So here I'm typing like a recipe for some coffee. And you know, it's just a notes app. I can like type into it and stuff. But there's also these computational utilities that you can add to your text note. So you can do things like scale your recipe or set a timer, right? And this is all user created, user initiated in the note. And I can kind of show you how that works. So we have this whole spreadsheet kind of system. Maybe I'll move over here so you can see that. And you can search for stuff in the document. Like here I searched for 11G, but you can also start generalizing those searches so you can find all my numbers. And then if I want to, scale up the recipe by 2, I just type amount times 2 and I throw that value in the doc. And just like that, I kind of have this live spreadsheet note going, right? And this is great. The problem is it's kind of tedious to write this stuff by hand. And so we've been playing with, can we have the AI do it for us and collaborate with us? So what if I just type double the quantities and then I hit Command Enter and I have the AI do all that work that I just showed you automatically. Okay, so it spits out this spreadsheet for us, and you can see in the note, it did exactly what I wanted, right? It doubled the quantities. Now, every time I type a new quantity into this doc, it'll double it instantly. So what's cool is at this point, we have some kind of code running. There's no more AI in the loop. This is just fast, normal code. I can look at the code, I can edit it. I can say ×4, that works fine. It's very predictable and fast and inspectable. So that's kind of neat. What's coming next? Oh yeah, I can ask for an explanation, like what did you do? And the AI can also give me a paragraph telling me what's going on here. I can kind of see what's happening at each step, and it's showing me kind of the intermediate things it's doing, right? Let's see. Oh yeah, so what if I want to edit what I did? I want to replace the original text instead of showing the sticker next to it. I can just edit my natural language thing. And what the AI is going to do now is it's going to do a minimal edit to the spreadsheet we already have to change it to do the new thing. So let's see. Okay, you can see now those stickers kind of show up on top of the text. So as I type new things, it's going to like double it and replace the original text. And the neat thing is, that was an AI edit, but we also have the direct manipulation option still available. So I can go to this dropdown and kind of configure that manually, or I can ask the AI to do it for me. And hopefully over time, I kind of learn more how the system works and I rely less on the AI. That's kind of the idea. Okay, yeah, that's enough. Cool.
This is very cool, but I just wonder, like, how do you guys, as a user, discover kind of what the AI can do and cannot do, and sort of, do I need to know how to write these sheets sort of to begin with in order to know what I can prompt with, or like, how do I kind of learn this?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think the biggest failure modes I've had with this thing are, if you ask it to do something that's impossible to do in this system, it will still try to do it, and it will make some confusing thing, and it's sort of unclear like what's going on. And so I think what I've been thinking about is probably there should be a first step where it might say, you ask it to do something, and it's like, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do that. Let's negotiate a little more, something like that. Linus, did you have a question? Or?
Yeah, my question is, in something like this, there are two ways to generate values, right? One is what you just showed, which is the AI generates a formula or an equation or code of some kind, and then you generate it once and then it's deterministic and fast, but there's limits to how complex of a question that can answer. And the other is you call the language model every time. I'm curious if you've thought about how to either roll that up into one abstraction that works smoothly everywhere, or how to communicate to users when to use which and resolve questions like that.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about. All the examples I showed here are basic math, and so it's like something that code is really good at. And I think in general, if code is really good at it, you should just use code because it's going to be fast and predictable and inspectable. But there are lots of other things in this environment where you might want AI in the loop. So for example, what if I had a recipe with a bunch of foods in it and I wanted to get a spreadsheet of all the ingredients of a recipe? That's not something that like JavaScript is very good at, but language models are awesome at that. And so I don't know. I don't have any I think my main mantra is like use code if you can, because it's much better than language models at basic math and things that code is good at. Like here you're seeing per keystroke live reactive interfaces are really nice if you can get them.
Yeah, I was curious. You mentioned that you were hoping that as you use the AI, that maybe you learn how to use the system underlying it, and you kind of wean yourself off of the AI. I don't know if you've had a chance to use this in Anger much. You probably spend a lot of time. Have you found yourself using the AI more and more, or kind of using it less and less? Like, has a hypothesis come to fruition?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best test user because I helped make this system, so I know too much. But I'm also very lazy, and so I have been finding that in general. Like I don't like writing code if I can avoid it. So when I'm using this tool, I just use the AI if I can, which is an interesting, I guess, reflection. The moment something goes wrong though, this is very important, like if it doesn't do the right thing and there's any debugging involved, then I have to jump in and figure it out. I've actually been like learning parts of this language that I had forgotten about by having the AI kind of like generate stuff and teach me, which is kind of cool. And like even editing that amount ×2 to amount ×3, that's the kind of thing where it's like anyone who can use a spreadsheet can do that kind of thing, right? So why bother trying to get this weird monster to like edit the code for you if you can just change a 2 to a 3, right? So maybe we should hold the questions then, and then yeah, I'll be around. So let's talk more about it. Thank you.
If you want to ask questions to any of the presenters, we'll have plenty of time afterwards, so go find them and ask Geoffrey questions later. All right, Gray. We're going to check this is the right video. I'm pretty sure it is.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Gray. I'm an AI designer and artist, and I'd like to show you a bit of history, and I'll start here. Like, if y'all remember back in like late 2018, early 2019, there was like GAN breeder, and it's now art breeder today, but it was the first time I really encountered moving through latent space. Back in the day, you would have to like dial specific genes and wait however many multiple dimensions you wanted to create. Click generate, you'd have to wait, and then you get the image, and you'd be like, okay, that's interesting. I'll like tune it. I'll generate, I'll wait. oh great, that's a new image, I can keep going. And I really wanted to just like move through latent space so much faster. And so I was really interested in like mapping it to my motion. So this is a project, Choremancy, that I made with my friend Aman Tawari. And in this case, we're using a Leap Motion controller. So we had like 12 total dimensions, like 6 off per hand of one-to-one control in the latent space. And so then you could just literally move your body and like find specific pockets of orientation space that were like correlated with a specific point in big GAN latent space. And the sad part is I feel like a lot of the image generation tools that we have now are really still back in that old day where you're having to like type something and click generate and it's slow enough to generate that you're waiting. And then you finally get the answer and you want to actually explore faster. And so I think that there's a lot of domains towards mapping it onto your movement directly that's especially fascinating. I guess some of the other issues involved with like moving through latent space is it just becomes like daunting. It's just like such a vast, dense space. And a lot of the UI are just like accruing history upon history upon history. And like in order to go back, you'd have to scroll back for like eons to find an old project. And so I was really interested in like visually representing my arrangement a little differently, where, for example, if I put in a prompt input, I can like extrude out a sequence of images. And then if I like any of these images, I can drag it orthogonally, and then that will pull out any children. And so you're just working fully in image to image space at that point. And then based on each decision moment, you're like pulling orthogonally out, and then you end up creating this very idiosyncratic map of the specific like curatorial decisions that you made. And it ends up forming like a very like idiosyncratic form overall. And so it's easier to maneuver through the space because you kind of have all these landmarks. This should loop, but I may also be out of time. The last thing I'll say is just, I'm really excited about generating UI, not just generating code to make UI or to render it classically. Like what I want to show with these things is like how flexible the materials that we have and the material representation that we can actually depict. And it would just be really boring if we were just stuck with like round recs forever. When we can just have stuff interpolate smoothly, and we'll eventually have our bodies just interpolating smoothly, and there's really, there's no way around it, but I'll call that.
Hi, I was just curious, like in that thing you said at the end with like generating UI directly, how do you deal with latency?
I'd probably say hardware acceleration. So like future, like. Hi.
If you are navigating, I just talk loud. If you're navigating this latent space in like a really fluid way, have you figured out any good ways to let the user like get little snapshots or something and gather the moments that generate what they want?
Totally. I often feel that experience when I'm conversing with people and we're both just like exploring this latent space conversationally together. And at some point we'll hit an idea and I'll be like, oh, that's cool. And I'll be like, oh, we should remember this. That's kind of the strategy that I use when I'm like trying to put a pin in it, like quite multimodally. I mean, sometimes if I'm like gesticulating to a person, I might actually freeze in that position, and that keys it in for them. Yeah. Linus.
In your first example, where you tie like 6 degrees of freedom per hand to moving through this latent space, how did you arrive at the number 6, and how many maximum different sliders of control do you think humans can control at once?
Those are both great questions. 6 fell out of 6 degrees translationally and 6 degrees rotationally. I think technically we were doing the quaternion, which is 7, but it's kind of like a fake extra degree there. That was only purely palm position and rotation. So like ostensibly you could map it to every single curve of your body, and whether or not that would be like coherent or allow users to actually arrive at meaningful movements, because sometimes the tracking instability would like curl the finger against what your proprioception was telling you, and then you'd break the association. So that's a really hard question though, in terms of how many total dimensions a human body can maneuver through like in a coherent way. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like trying to spell symmetrically with both hands, and like how many parallel, like separate, like directions of agency you can actually author, which I don't know.
Sounds like a challenge. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Greg. Cool. All right, food has arrived. So what we're thinking is we're gonna take a break now so that you can eat it while it's hot, and then we're gonna resume demos afterwards. So we're gonna break now, and we're gonna come back at 1:45. So 6:45, we'll resume. But there's pizza over there, go eat.
Which is not quite set up yet. So sorry about that, but I'm putting it out right now.
Okay, wait 5 minutes for pizza to be laid out. Go talk to each other for 5 minutes. Sorry. Oh, okay, we'll watch out for it. We're going to start again in about 5 minutes. If you could make your way back to your seats. Thank you. Everyone, please take your seats. We are restarting demos.
The time has come once again for the demos. Everyone look to your left and your right and grab the nearest person and pull them towards the benches. Fun fact, we have this space for the next many, many hours. And so if you want to continue the conversation, you can after our slate of fantastic demos. Thank you. Please make your way back to the table. All right. Before we start, a lot of friends, a lot of strangers here. If you're sitting at the table, or if you're like standing around, I've told some people this already, but like most people here, almost everyone here, are like the most creative and thoughtful and interesting people who are thinking really deeply about interfaces or about AI or even about other things like hardware or the like importance of like building urban infrastructure. And if you're here, look to your left and look to your right and say hello. Wave your hands. I guarantee you, people here are very interesting. All right, stop hellos. But please try to meet new people here, start conversations, follow each other on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever the app of the day is. And yeah, make some new friends. That's all. Let's get going with the next round of demos.
Okay, we're going to go through our second set of demos. First, I want to say a big thank you to Emily, who is over there behind the food, who did an enormous amount of work organizing this. Thank you, Emily. All right, Jeremy, you're going to be up.
And while we're applauding for people, certainly Linus, Sean, Maggie deserve a little round of applause too.
Way of browsing the internet. As you read
on so much love for this audience. It's at a point
enables an entirely new way of browsing
conceptual space, which is beautiful.
As you read online, highlighting
so
text links.
What you're looking at is actually partly birthed out of an idea that came from a book by Mortimer Adler. He's a book called How to Read a Book. And it has this concept of level 4 reading, which he calls syntopical reading. It's the idea that if you read a number of different books about the exact same subject, seeing it from all of those perspectives simultaneously, you can come to much deeper conclusions and perspectives on whatever it is that you're thinking about. And this tool lets you think in a syntopical way. As you highlight text, say you might be reading something online, you can see, in this case, every single line in a website that is related to or relevant to the line that you've read here. And so the idea is that you can basically be reading 5 to 10 web pages. In this case, it's talking about AGI safety from first principles, and this references 4 different web pages on the exact same website. They're all describing a similar concept. And so you can jump basically through all of the references to that idea at the same time. And this kind of system works with books. It works with really your personal notes or personal data, anything that you've chosen to upload. Can you move on to the video that's under this one in the Twitter thread, by the way? Is it possible? So this second video presents
People are constantly redoing
a
work
slightly
that has
different
been
idea.
done.
So we saw this sort of conceptual browsing, but this is actually using a similar tool to basically do like proactive retrieval and search. So the idea is that as you type or highlight, you can trigger search queries. And those search queries mean that solutions to the problem that you've been writing about or ideas that are relevant basically can be injected into your worldview, and you have this immersive experience of all of the information that exists inside of your workspace, your personal writing, etc. And actually, if you can jump to the third video in this thread, that'd be ideal. So the final video describes
For a student, omni-supercharged.
omnidirectional linking. So there's a concept behind Rome and a number of these bidirectional linking tools that you should connect specific ideas to one another. But we can use machine learning to probabilistically connect all ideas to all other ideas, and then basically impose a filter showing you, only the ideas that are most relevant, but having some chance of basically connecting, any idea to any other idea, given the context and given the relevance of that idea. And then you can jump into the document. So here's an example you just saw at the end with a research paper, where every single research paper that's relevant to the paper that you're
Integrating
writing
all knowledge
can be
into-
potentially behind the search system. And so if you have all of archive behind this search system as you're typing, then it will pick up content from your context and from what you've just written, and it will show you every researcher that has had that idea before, for example. And you can jump to the exact part of their paper that discusses the idea without ever leaving your working environment. In practice, connecting you to the totality of that body of research thought. Hello.
Yeah. I think I understand it from the perspective personal knowledge management, but for the first use case, when you are browsing the website, the detail I didn't get is where are the stuff on the right hand side coming from? You said something like article in the same website.
The first video. He wants the first video. Yeah. So basically, any data can go into the system. So in this case, if you put a website in, then it'll scrape that entire website, every page of that website.
Oh, you crawl the entire website.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
see.
basically here, you're on the alignment forum and it'll choose the alignment forum as the retrieval source. So every single retrieval that you see here is from different articles on that website, different authors who wrote different articles. All of that will be brought up, and it's all conceptually similar. So it's like you're doing a semantic browsing where whenever there's a meaningful connection elsewhere on the site, it shows up automatically instead of it being unfindable.
See, yeah, I think every website should has it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the cool thing, it's implemented as an extension, so you can basically upload any website. So it'll just scrape the Internet Archive's version of that website, and then you can open it, and it'll work on any site.
I guess a follow-up is, do you think it would be possible to do on an internet scale?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, embed the whole web. So our servers at present are limited in size, but those are very ambitious ideas. No, Google certainly has many copies of the internet, and it's totally possible. Google, practically speaking, kind of lets you do this if you do search. So you can imagine all of the search results here being from Bing or being from Google, and then you have a site colon, which lets you query that specific website. So it's on some level kind of been built before. It's just not been sort of orchestrated with this UX.
We'd like to try it out. Yeah, thank you. Super cool.
Yeah, so if you go to my Twitter at @JVNixon, then there's a link, you can use it. Yeah.
So I have a question. Can you control when the browser extension is on and it shows you that, or does it like just keep going every time you're on a new website reading something?
So yeah, you can open and close it with a hotkey, or you can click a button in the top right corner and it'll open or close. And then when it's open, you select a data source and it triggers by highlight or it triggers by you typing. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So I think actually it would be better if it automatically showed up when it knew that what it was about to tell you was very important or would dramatically change your behavior, and then it would disappear as soon as what you were doing was irrelevant. And the triggering algorithms for that require human feedback. So once we have a sufficiently large data set of user behavior, when we know when users do and don't want to interact with the tool, we'll open and close it in an automatic way, or design it to make that make sense.
Oh yeah, thanks. Very cool extension. I'm just curious, how are the results on the right ranked here, and sort of how do you determine sort of the relevance?
So yeah, this system is a hierarchical semantic similarity followed by a re-ranker. So basically you have a document search followed by a semantic search within those documents for paragraphs or phrases. And then the returned, so we return like 200 different possible sentences, paragraphs, or phrases, and then a transformer, which is trained to optimize for whether you'll click on it, optimizes the ordering of the results.
Got it. Very cool.
Great, thank you. Okay, next we have Kabir.
Hi everyone, I'm Kabir, and I have three mini demos that are kind of based around this idea of adapting interactions from other domains. The first is something I call a fact skeleton. So I'm a college student and I've tried using ChatGPT to write my essays. And when I do write a history paper, my main goal is to build an argument. But right now it's very hard to engage with text at the level of meaning rather than of prose or syntax. So this is where I built to do this. So you have some text on the left and this fact skeleton on the right that exposes all of the embedded facts. And one of the cool things about this interface is that you can actually drag and drop facts from one paragraph to another, and the system will edit the original text to incorporate it. This is something that people do in programming languages where they call it a projectional editor. And instead of text, you could imagine code on the left and an abstract syntax tree on the right. The second demo that I wanted to show is called a tool palette. So I don't think the video is caught up to me yet. So this tool palette is inspired by FigJam. And the idea is how can we extend tool interfaces and ways of working with tools from other software to working with intelligence. And one of the things that I was exploring was that LLMs are very flexible, and how do you give users access to that flexibility without compromising on a nice looking interface? So one thing that I do in this demo is I use the sunglasses emoji, drop it under the text. It changes it to be casual and conversational. And what I'm doing here is I add a devil face emoji and I make the tone devious and insinuating. And when I drop it on, you can see that it's it says, oh, you think systems are just innocent little devices, which I think is pretty fun. The third thing that I built into this demo is Zoom previews. And this is kind of one of my nitpicks of Notion AI is that if you summarize something or expand something, it doesn't tell you how long or short it's going to be. And it's a little bit difficult to give guarantees about text length. But I kind of tried to do that here. And I built this inline Zoom preview where it'll give you like a broad idea of the length and it'll transform the text in order to like match that length. Thank you.
Yeah, like curious on the emoji style idea, right? Does it work if you directly put emoji in the prompt? Because ChatGPT can interpret emoji.
Yeah, I tried that, but in some cases it can be like a little bit ambiguous because, for the sunglasses emoji, right? The tone can sometimes come out to be like a little bit pompous and, dickish. So
makes sense. Thank you.
Type your own facts, or
So you can actually that's one of the things I wanted to incorporate into this demo, but I kind of built it over the weekend. So it's a bit jank, but yes, that is something that would be kind of great for this kind of interface and really thinking about like how to engage with the meaning.
The emoji stuff is really interesting. I think for demo purposes, things like make it more aggressive, make it more funny, make it more short or long is sort of communicates the point. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on in practical usage. If you're trying to do useful creative work or useful knowledge work with these things, what kinds of, like the way that I describe those emojis are like brushes, like you're sort of applying it to a paragraph and it's changing the style. I'm curious if you've thought about what practically useful or valuable or productive brushes you can build out of these language models.
Yeah, I think on the practicality side of things, I was thinking more about like the fact skeleton, but the sort of the goal of the demo is to think about like, how can we like be as fluid as possible and have as many like, ways of interacting with the text beyond just like, for instance, you right click it or it shows you sort of this picker and that kind of thing, and incorporating into like more of like a Google Docs style interface almost, where there's a lot of different tools and like there's different ways of using those tools. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Kasra, are you here? Excellent.
Okay, hello. I've made myself a little bootleg Twitter client. Don't tell Elon Musk. But basically, I get a lot of value out of Twitter. People post cool stuff on there, but it's also kind of distracting and addicting. So this thing does three things. One, which doesn't use AI, is it just queues up tweets and it only shows you things that came out yesterday, which has totally killed my Twitter addiction because I can only check it once a day. It doesn't update if I check more often. And then what that lets you do is actually bring related tweets closer to each other. So that's the first thing it uses GPT-3 for, is just extract entities and then bring things closer together, which makes it a more kind of seamless reading experience because your brain doesn't have to context switch as much as you're going down the list. And then the third thing it does, I basically just told it what I'm interested in, and then I ask it to rank each tweet, like from 1 to 5 on how close it is to my interests. So it can use that as sort of a ranking signal and to actually filter out things that aren't relevant. So pretty basic. Actually, most of the effort went into building the scraping part of it. And I open sourced it. So if you want to, mess around with it, build your own client, mess around with like your own algorithmic ranking stuff, you can just go on GitHub and search for feed paper and fork it and mess around. All right.
So question is like, how exactly do you use like GPT to extract entities and cluster them? Like use some just black magic prompts?
The prompt is pretty simple. You can see it on GitHub, but basically, it passes in the tweets and then it says, what are the entities that are mentioned in this? And the only trick is sometimes it can give you like very generic entities. So I also ask it for the main entity after it gives me all of the entities, which is used as a stronger sort of clustering signal to bring things closer together in the feed.
Is it usually like dense enough, or can it sometimes be just really sparse? Like there's not many tweets in one entity?
Yeah, sometimes, if someone says like, I had a great breakfast this week, or something like that, it won't have any entities, but that usually means that there isn't anything else related to it anyway.
Yeah, have you put thought into exposing the prompts to users? Like for example, at that stage where you asked it to rank a tweet based on like how similar it is to your interests, like what about showing the user
Yes.
so they can like edit them if it doesn't feel like the right description?
Yeah, totally. So right now the interests are, if you click that cog button, there's just an input field where you enter your interests. It doesn't do anything smart of like trying to infer your interests and just paste that into the prompt. But yeah, you can kind of show the whole prompt and let you edit the whole thing.
So I guess how's your experience when using this? Because so I think you mentioned that it's showing you stuff from a day before, and things are moving so fast now. Things are changing by literally hours. So I guess you ever feel left out, like you don't understand the context of what's actually going on?
Yeah, and I mean, depending on your use case, maybe you need like up to the minute recency, but for anything I care about, the 1 day delay hasn't been a problem. Like it's worth it for me, like having the sort of sanity back and not having to check kind of every 1 hour. Thanks.
All right, do we have Marie or Michael? Oh, excellent.
Everyone, we are building a thing called Mark Prompt. So Mark Prompt is basically GPT on top of your Markdown files. So where does it come from? We initially started with a project called Motif, which is this in-browser Markdown editor that allows you to mix content and code and build websites, especially documentation websites. And so we deployed it with rather large companies with a lot of documentation, typically like 500 to 1,000 pages of Markdown. And then we did the obvious thing a few months ago. We built a Docs GPT search on top of websites. And it really took off. So we decided to open source it and put it as a standalone platform. And the way it works is fairly simple. Maybe we can just play it again. Yeah. So you can maybe just pause it here. The way it works is that you basically give it a source of content. Any source works, like a GitHub repo, you can upload files, you can do it via curl. We're adding more sources like Notion, Google Docs, Zendesk, and so on. Then we built an embeddings database that essentially chunks your content into meaningful, like atomic parts. And once we have this embeddings database, we can start building things on top of it because we essentially capture the meaning behind the content. This is typically what you want when you have a doc search. You ask a question and it comes up with the right answer based on several parts of your docs potentially. And so we expose it as an API, as a React component that you can very easily embed into your website. This is just the beginning of essentially building programs on top of your content. A prompt here used for building a search interface is basically just a way of asking your content for a question and providing an answer. So the next step, which we're now thinking hard about, is how can we use all these embeddings to create new types of content? So what we saw really with deploying all these like docs websites is that maintaining docs and editing docs is a hard problem still today. Fixing several versions of your docs, working on internationalizations, making sure that the language is harmonious, all these things are still really, really hard. And this is where GPT can help. There's a very important part, which is the human part, the human in the loop, the people who actually create the content. But then there's a bunch of things on top of that that we can help with, basically. So this is what we're building with the Mark Prompt, which is essentially an AI native CMS, right? So the core
data is not just like plain content, but also the underlying embeddings. This is how we can build these sorts of great experiences on top of your docs.
Questions?
Are you doing any similarity search on the questions? If I'm asking a question to the docs, I might ask it, I want to add, or how do I connect a template to intercom? Like, are you doing that work to avoid like rerunning the LLM to generate the answer?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, we're using Superbase vector storage, which works really well. They have a similarity operation that makes it very easy to implement and cost effective. So this has been working great. So really the implementation is, I think it's elegant. Basically, you take a prompt, like an input question, you do similarity search to find like the 10 most relevant sections in your content, you rank them, and you input it into a parent prompt. And then you ask, based on this content, could you please provide me an answer? And then there's questions like hallucinations. How do you handle that it doesn't give you a random answer? Well, then you can instruct your prompt to say, make sure to specifically produce an answer based on that content. If you're not sure, just say, I don't know. So that's really just the beginning of how we can play around with embeddings and build programs, because then you can start transforming that content in all sorts of different ways. One is to answer a question, but another one is take all these embeddings and make 3 versions of the docs. One for beginners, one for experts, and maybe one as an API reference. And all this can be automated and really allow anyone to explore in a very, very simple way, because you're not dealing with code. You're not actually writing code, and you're not publishing a package or anything. You're just like typing these instructions. And if you're sufficiently precise, it actually works.
Just one random idea is because of tools like ChatGPT, we are relying less on docs. So I guess I'm just thinking about the future of documentation for code, because we're relying less on this now. Maybe there's another version that could be like documentation for ChatGPT to understand your code. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, have you thought about the landscape of how docs is going to change for code with ChatGPT, because we're relying less on them? So maybe in the future, you don't need docs. You're just talking to ChatGPT and it does all the other stuff.
I mean, for sure, prompts are a new way to interact with content. Is it going to be the only way? I'm not sure. We still like swiping photos on our phones, right? This is a great way to explore, content. There's so many opportunities, I think.
Any more? All right, round of applause. Okay, next, Mary Rose Cook. Do we have you? Yes. Also, Mary helped make Airtable, which is very useful right now.
Hi, so we're looking at a ball bouncing around an animation, and I made a tool that helps you augment a program that's already working and running. So the first step is that an LLM generates some suggested changes to this program. You can see we've got randomized ball color on collision or change ball color periodically. I make a choice, so I randomize the ball color, and you can see that now when it bounces, the ball color changes. Then 2 new suggestions to choose from, again generated by the LLM. Now let's have a neon trail following the ball. That looks pretty cool. We'll watch that bounce again. 2 more suggestions. So the LLM both produces the suggestions, but of course writes the code as well. And it just augments the existing program. So now it's doing some cool scatter particle things. 1 more suggestion or 2 more suggestions here. I think I choose the disco ball reflections. And now on bounce, we get these scatter things or whatever. So the goal here was to just get rid of code completely. So many of these types of demos I've seen are like you have the code on the right, and that just seems, why bother? Just sublimate the code and just have the tool generate everything for you. One other thing, and then one other goal is to try and hide how long it takes GPT to generate text. So it's a linear process. As you can see, I've sort of hidden it there, but the user is kind of thinking about their choice as it's being generated in the background, so that when they make that click, boom, they get the change immediately. Thanks.
Okay, questions?
The last part you were saying that is the code generated for both options, and then the moment you choose one, it then executes?
That's exactly right, yeah.
I love how you make this feel like a game. Like I could see this just being a very enjoyable thing. Like, have you considered interactions such as shuffling the options, or even treating it like a game sort of thing, where you're like, where you can like see the history going on? Like, what have you thought of to make it fun?
Yeah, it's a really good question. An early version had basically the text of all of the suggestions on the right, so that you could see it kind of building up like a story or almost like a choose your own adventure. And that would support kind of writing in your own suggestion rather than just being given suggestions, because it does feel quite passive at the moment to have the computer tell you what you want to do to your program. But yeah, I think there's stuff to explore for sure.
This is a fun demo. I'm wondering both what level of abstraction do you want to ultimately get to? Do you want this? Do you want to go where they're drawing or something? What role do you want a user's like activeness to be? And anything on like leakiness of abstractions?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We were having a conversation earlier about Rick Rubin's opinion of people as tastemakers. So his role in the studio is to help the artist with their taste to make good choices. So I think there's a role to play for the human there. I think also, I really hope we develop gestures for indicating parts of a running program. So at the moment, you just say some words and they get fed in. Whereas it feels like you could sort of say, oh, over on this right-hand area is where I want you to make this next change. Or maybe you could do some sort of color-based selection, or you could talk about a specific entity and say, just change that, and I mean this one when you're talking about it. So if the programs can have more awareness of their own internals, I think it could become way more expressive than it is at the moment.
Yeah, this seems like it'd be a very fun, like passive VJ at some party, right? Where it's just watching the people and it's based off of audio and video and whatnot. It's coming with different visualizations and just kind of cycling through based off of what it perceives the mood to be. Like, seems very, very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that would be really fun. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm around to talk more about this.
Yeah, round of applause. Nice. Okay, Max, how are you?
Cool. Yeah, I resonate a lot with Mary's demo because I also don't like staring at text boxes when I'm making something that's not a text box. I'd rather look at the thing I'm actually making. And so I'm on Craigslist right now. I'm not making Craigslist, but I'm manipulating it because I want to explore the design space of Craigslist. So I made this Chrome extension this morning where I'm pointing at things and deciding what I want them to look like. So I'm just going to tell it what I want it to look like. We have this header up here, and I think I want it to look a little more minimal. And here we go. Yeah, this is language models, guys. Okay, it made it too minimal. So then I'll look at the next option. Okay, it's a little less minimal. And there's another one. So that was fun. I'm gonna do one more example here. But generally this set of ideas is around like, can I just point at something and explore the design space that way instead of manipulating some box in the distance? Okay, I'm gonna make Craigslist a rainbow color. It's just another demo. It has really bad taste. Language models have terrible taste. But if it had better taste, maybe in a year or something, I think it'd be cool to program by pointing at things instead of typing them. Thank you.
All right, questions?
I'm just curious if you pointed it on the entire site at once.
So there's a token limit. So what I'm doing is I'm feeding the entire DOM like element, and then I'm asking it to make different ones. That's literally it. So you can't fit all of the DOM, unfortunately.
Can you make it so every time you go on that website, it's such style that you want it?
Oh yeah, that's definitely a direction you can go in. It's like user styling. I didn't explore that at all. I made this in like 2 hours.
I'm a huge fan of the idea of pointing at things and giving things instructions instead of just instructing the void of chat. I'm curious if you've thought about how you could implement this kind of pattern of like pointing at something and telling it to do something, like this like select the noun and then verb kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for things that are less concrete on the screen. So like one thing might be like, you notice that every text on this website is like blue, right? And maybe you want to like point at this abstract thing of like the font on the page or like text styling on the page, but that's not something you can point at. Curious if you thought about pointing at abstract things like that.
I like that idea. I didn't think about it. Thank you for the idea.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, how emotional can your request be? So say I want it to make me feel angry. Can you give it an instruction like that and get a result that is, you know, the visual experience of rage-inducing?
I love that. We should try it later. I have my laptop. We'll do it.
Okay.
All right, round of applause. Okay, Miguel, are you around? Excellent.
Just play it from like 5 seconds in.
5 seconds in?
Yeah. Perfect. You can just pause it there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm building a programming tutor, and the way it works, hopefully the quality gets better, but basically there's a programming problem that somebody's trying to solve. And the moment they get stuck, all they have to do is click this raise hand button, and the tutor will know exactly what to do, where they're stuck. No input is needed, no pointing, no text, seamless experience. Just hit play, yeah. So this is the problem twosome, probably familiar. And here the user's gonna, it's hard to see it, but they just looped over the items, not the indices. So they just click raise hand. And so it says, great start. I see that you have defined the function, blah, blah. However, in order to access the indices of the array, you need to iterate over the range of indices instead of the elements themselves. And it says, can you modify your for loop to do that? So it's not giving you the answer like ChatGPT or any other tool. It's prompting you to critically think. So here the student just said why. Let's see what it says. Iterating over the range of indices will allow you to access both the index and the element at that index in the array. So it's still not giving you the answer, but it's like guiding your thinking. And this is to replicate what an actual tutor experience feels like. So here, the student tries to fix it by just adding len, which looks right, but it's not correct. Great job on starting the function. However, I noticed that there was a small error in your code. Can you spot it? So it's just trying to redirect your attention without giving you the answer. So I'll just say no. No worries. The issue is with the line and then the what you wrote. The len function returns the length of the nums list, but you need to iterate over the range of indices of the list. So again, it's not giving you the answer. It wants you to do your own thinking to connect the dots yourself. And then, yeah, I think the video finishes here. That's the demo, yeah.
Questions, Geoffrey?
Yeah, I'm not. Great demo. My question is, how hard is it to get it to ask good questions that are, helpful enough but don't reveal the answer? Like, did that take a lot of thinking?
Yeah. So this took a lot of time to get it to, first of all, not hallucinate, and then so ChatGPT and these LLMs are really good from going to A to B. Like, really, they're tuned in that direction. Right, get you the answer. But trying to get it to be a little more abstract and somehow still accurate is very difficult. So that involved a lot of grounding that I had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a question about how, when you ask the question, do you guess what the user's intent is or what problem they're struggling with? For example, here, it seems like maybe the user would want to deal with the syntax error first because they forgot to fill in the body of the for loop.
Yeah, so most of the errors people will make are not actually syntactic. This has a heavy focus on more like logical errors. And so it's assuming what the person wants to do. Yeah, it's trying to guess that intention. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess in your testing, how often is there some sort of mismatch? Like, you might be stuck on another part of the problem, but it tries to guide you in another direction or something.
Early on, that would happen a lot, but with the grounding that I did, that solved that issue. Yeah, solved that issue.
So my personal way of like approaching this coding exercise is like I use like a pen and paper, think about it, and then go to the editor and solve the problems, right? So have you thought about that as well?
Yeah, so the thing about something like this is that it needs the context, right? So unless it has some vision capability and like sees you sketching your pseudocode or something, like it doesn't know where you are. So the only way to try and estimate and guess what your thinking is or like where you currently are is to have some kind of connection to your thoughts. And right now, this is this piece of code. So it's trying to get at that, like this is your scratchpad, but it's code instead.
Any more? All right, round of applause. Thank you, Miguel. Okay, next, Paul.
Hi, all. I'm Paul, and here's a exploratory demo. If you think about like the primitive interface to LLMs, it's a function. It's something that takes a input set of tokens and returns something. So here, this is kind of like a tangible interface. Here I'm creating a new block that's a function that just takes a string and returns another string. And so I'm going to take this function and put it in front of the LLM. And then I'm going to create a value block like rainbows. And then I'm going to drop it on the function. And you can kind of see the blocks go through the functions. It's a lot like Factorio. Basically, my goal is just to make everything like Factorio. Here I have like 2 more function blocks. So this is a function block. Sorry, I like skipped through that, but the LLM returned like a color palette of hex values. So I'm gonna put more blocks with each other. And then there's a block that extracts hex colors from a string, another one that changes it to HTML. And so here I have a string Bulbasaur. I drop it, it goes through GPT, and I can see all the intermediate values along the way. Like here's a return value from GPT. I'm going to extract the color values and then have some HTML here, which I can render. So there's my Bulbasaur color palette. So yeah, that's a quick tangible interface for computation and LLMs. Thanks.
Okay, questions about Factorio?
What I see here is like that little magic wand is like the best type converter ever made. And so have you tried to convert any really weird types into really weird other types? Because I guess Pokemon, like you have a straightforward like color mapping, but like, what if you convert something really weird to another really weird thing?
Yeah. I spent 5 minutes on this demo, so no. I've only tried rainbows, Bulbasaur, and Pikachu, probably. So not yet, but I'll play around with it more.
So how would you approach like getting people to use interfaces like this as opposed to like code? And how do you like approach the problem of like letting people compose these blocks together to build like larger and more complex things?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, like I have another project called Nato, which kind of explores this, which has a lot of overlap, but kind of puts the code more, it's more code forward. This one here, it's a higher level interface where you kind of have like blocks, but you can't even see the values until you hover over it. But what I wanted to explore here was how this feels. I don't have opinions on how useful or practical it is yet, but I'm going to keep thinking about it. Yeah, thanks.
We have one right there, and then.
Yeah, so you mentioned Factorio. Like, what is the version of this if you were to really go hard on it and there's like things going on in the background and it gets more complex? What does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, so one of my main theories is that like coding should feel more like playing Factorio. Like if you imagine this is some world map and you have multiple people working together on this in this environment. So you'll have like little avatars running around. Like if I want to move the blocks, you actually have to like your maybe your mouse cursor can be your avatar, but then you can if you have multiplayer, you can see multiple avatars running around. And then I think also using zoom. Like here, maybe if you zoom in at different zoom levels, you can see different fidelities of what you have in your world.
This is a really beautiful design. I really like it. It reminds me a lot of Space Chem, which is one of my favorite games from Zachtronics. But I guess my like core question is, it looks like you're kind of moving these atomic blocks from through functions. And in Factorio, one of the things that you know is that like some blocks require multiple inputs. And I'm curious as to, from like the Space Chem Factorio side of things, like what does a molecule of a block look like here? What is like a block grouping look like? Or is it just singular atomics?
Yeah, good question. In this one, this is pretty primitive here. There are only two concepts. There are values, like immutable values, and functions that apply to a single input. But I have another prototype where I explored like, it's pretty natural to extend this to, splitters or conditionals, right? If you want to branch on some condition, you want to like spit it to different outputs. And so, yeah, there are ways you can extend this. You have types, right? Like this can only take a number, or this can only take an animal. And I think the interface there would be like, each of these blocks has like a loading dock, and like things would arrive. But then only when like all those requirements are fulfilled, it'll go through. Otherwise, like maybe like a police will come by and like take it and throw it into like jail or graveyard or something. So there's a lot of metaphors that we can use here to make it pretty fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about this in terms of like Scratch and hour of code and introducing new people to coding or young people to coding. This seems like it might be even more engaging in like a way. Have you? And Nato is amazing, and you have so many cool projects that you're working on. If you had more time, have you thought about kind of using this as an introduction to programming and like onboarding versus like maybe the end state?
Yeah, good question. I haven't thought about, with Nato, I think a lot about how to use that for learning code. I haven't thought about that here at all, but I do think because it is so high level, where you're just dealing with blocks and they're only so, like the number of actions that you can take are pretty limited once you have created the blocks. I think it'd be a great like first day to programming where you're just like dragging blocks around, playing with functions, and seeing that, getting that like live output. Yeah. Thanks.
Round of applause. Thanks, Paul. Okay, Rob.
Mine is very, I'll use the microphone still, but mine is very tightly scripted to have made it into the 2-minute timelines. So I might just blitz, I'm going to blitz through this a little bit. Definitely going to need to start over because otherwise it'll be very out of sync. Okay, cool. Going back to the Zettelkasten by Niklas Luhmann and before, it has long been an ideal for note-taking systems and software to enable people to use their own past self as a research assistant. You should rarely need to start with a blank page if you already have thoughts and notes that might be relevant to your current interests. Typically, this requires the user to search for past notes before they start writing or to disrupt their flow to come up with and write a search. Searching is a learned behavior and many people don't recognize the situations where they could write a search or even like come up with ideas of what they could put into the search bar. So the primary goal of this UX is to extend a workflow previously available only to like expert tools for thought users to novices. So here I've got text I'm working on the left. I've written down some thoughts, but know that I need to build on it. And on the right, we see a prompt that generates provocative questions. In theory, the prompt could be whatever, but we'll start here. There's a regenerate button. I'm gonna pause this real quick. You'll notice that there was a regenerate button on the prompt. And then there's also like a pin. And so that's like to get new responses or to keep a certain one. There's also an edit pencil icon to like change the question. And then there's a search bar. So if you click on the looking glass, then it will change the sidebar and translate the question into a search over your knowledge graph. So this could just be a semantic similarity search, or it could do a hide methodology, generating a response and then doing a semantic similarity search based on that. It shows you the titles of pages that come up as well as specific paragraphs it thinks will answer your question. You'll also notice a summarize button to lower the amount of time it takes the user to grok a long set of results. So then if you pin this question, like let's say you really like all the search results you got and the summary you got, then it will draw connections in a graph-based data structure between the page that you're writing on, the question and its search results, making the whole chain accessible and queryable. So my main open question right now is really just like how dynamic to make it. You know, like how frequently is it going to rerun this whole process? How do you save it all? But yeah, it's just to make this expert user behavior something that just kind of happens automatically as you're writing. The underlines are just links to other pages, right? So the context that I'm doing this within is that I use a lot of these like tools for thought, like Roam Research, Obsidian, Tana, Notion, right? And there you can like have a whole bunch of separate concepts that are all connected to each other. And like each of those concepts might be its own page, right? So this is
like those underlined pages are pages in the same sense that like this is one that it could find a result for.
Great.
Okay, Sean. Save the best for last.
All right, I know I'm standing between all of you and more pizza, drinks, and demo alley, so I'll try to be quick. This is my demo. All right, I'll kind of narrate this. So just quick, the idea behind this was I was thinking about, ChatGPT is very similar to maybe Siri or Google Assistant in spirit. And if you ask yourself, if Siri actually worked, how many UIs do you actually need? If it's able to give you the information you need kind of on the fly, maybe most things can be done through text or through voice. So like maybe I would estimate like that eliminates roughly 40% of the UIs. There's still like a large amount, maybe you need to visualize something before you do it. But for most of those cases, like maybe we don't actually need to handcraft and artisanally build all these different UIs. So in this case, I'm just, this is a open source version of the ChatGPT UI. So I can come in here and I can kind of hack on it. And in this demo, I'm saying like, hey, I want interactive, sortable, searchable table that displays the top 10 most popular fruits. And this is actually not the real demo because I didn't think anyone would believe that. Originally, what I said is I just want the list of the top 10 fruits in the US. But what I'm doing here is saying, hey, give me this table. And behind the scene, I'm chaining different prompts. I'm saying, hey, the first one is ChatGPT, you're a famous designer or product or PM. Given this prompt, describe to me a React component that would behave this way and everything that it should do. And then I take the output of that. I pass it to another one that says, hey, you're able to go and look for NPM packages that might satisfy this. Give me a list of that. And then finally, I pass it to one more where I say, here's a structure of a self-contained HTML page. Given this description and these packages, write a program that is going to actually, or a component that will actually fulfill what they need. So in this case, I have a interactive, searchable component that's also sourced the top 10 most popular fruits in the US. And I didn't have to build this. I just built it myself. In fact, I might feel ashamed to ask another human being to spend even a little bit of their life to build this kind of UI. But maybe I actually want it. I want this to visualize something. So this UI kind of comes into existence. I use it once. It costs me effectively nothing. And then it just kind of disappears into the ether. I have another one that it creates a map program. It knows about OpenMap, stuff that I don't necessarily know about. And it kind of creates these UIs on the fly. This one right here was actually motivated by the original GPT-4 demo, where Greg Brackman does this very cool thing, where he asks for he uploads a video, and he asks that ChatGPT write a program that extracts all the video from 0 to 5 seconds. Very, very impressive. It writes the code, uses FFmpeg, does everything. But it's also kind of like an awkward way to interact with a component, right? Or maybe you're like, well, actually, I meant the first 1.5 seconds to 7 seconds, something along those lines, where like a UI would actually be quite useful there. You wouldn't want someone to like make that custom for this one use case, but maybe ChatGPT can. So in this case, I literally described what I wanted. It figured out the HTML5 upload HPIs or whatever it is. It knows about FFmpeg WASM, which is a WebAssembly version of FFmpeg. And I was able to upload it and get my UI and extract my video. Similarly, maybe I want to have a video player that adjusts the playback speed. And so it comes up with it. I can drag and drop my video in here. Up ahead here. So I drop my video in here. I scrub through here and it plays it. The idea being that like these are all silly UIs that you wouldn't want someone to actually spend their time writing. But you could imagine, for example, maybe something like, I'm planning a trip to New York, show me the 3 big airports out there, sort them by some factor, show me how long it's going to take to actually get from there to somewhere else. and kind of interactively describing a UI, seeing it pop up, describing in more detail what you want, being able to actually then say, okay, well, show me the flights and I want to book this one, and then it goes away. So the idea is that maybe something like 50% of UIs could just be automatically generated. So that kind of leaves maybe 10% of very frequently used apps and UIs that are actually handcrafted, built artisanally like we do today. So that's my demo.
This is a really cool demo. Can you speak a little bit more about what does the backend for this look like, and how are you chaining these prompts, and really just what's the system architecture kind of behind all of this?
System architecture is a great way to describe it. So if you just imagine the hackiest possible thing you could do, that's roughly what I have. It's just a Next.js app, this UI, right? So behind the scenes, I just have a serverless function that kind of chains things together. This video is a little bit fake. I cut out the loading times for the purposes of the demo, but I kind of figured that's like an implementation detail. Maybe next year it'll be much faster. So basically, kind of on the fly or on the back end, it's just kind of, it takes that and then passes it to GPT, gets the description, changes it through. And at the end, it gets some HTML, writes that to the disk, and then embeds it. You could probably do a much more sophisticated version, but this was just a quick hack. And like I said, this is actually not the real demo. I didn't think anyone would believe the real demo. In this video, I've actually described in kind of painful detail what I want the UI to do. But what I actually did beforehand was just say, show me the top 10 fruits. And it would just list them. And then you say, well, show me into a table. And now I want to be able to sort it. And at some point, it actually picks up on, okay, this is probably a UI. This is a component. And there was another prompt that said, here's what you wrote previously. And like the code you wrote previously. So update it to now incorporate this new product description. So you can kind of see the UI iterate over time. But I thought that would be too magical, and no one would think that was real.
I'm curious, these all seem like kind of normal UIs that already exist in some form. Have you tried making any funkier, weird things, and is it able to succeed? And do you have to try harder to get it to work?
I haven't. So my whole thing is like a lot of the, it's not that I'm deeply dissatisfied with my job, but I feel like I reinvent the wheel a lot all the time. And I'm like, come on, GPT can probably do this for me at this point. So it's not about like exploring all of the crazy, funky possibilities. It's like how much of my time is spent doing the same thing again and again, when really maybe that can be automated at a lower level.
Random question, but have you thought about what other interfaces would, I really like the idea of creating a UI once and it just goes away forever. Other than ChatGPT, have you thought about what other interfaces would that be useful for or applicable?
Yeah, I actually think something like rewind.ai, like a hack I'd like to explore is to bring this kind of system into like macOS. So you could imagine something that uses the accessibility APIs to actually read the text in any application you're in, any image that you're looking at, and then kind of propose that to the backend with a prompt that says, the user is currently looking at this, maybe there's some dates, there's some locations, there's some actionable text. What kind of actions do you think the user might want to take? And then based off of that, maybe we provide some suggestions kind of within Safari or whatever app it might be, an overlay that says, hey, you've hovered over this, here are the things you might want to do. And then from there, you can like generate the UIs kind of on the fly. So even in Siri, right? You can imagine right now, Siri can only respond to you typically in text. Maybe it shows you like a little weather widget, but you can imagine there are a lot of cases where maybe it could design something on the fly, show it to you, you explore it, and then you dismiss it. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, that was our last demo. You made it all the way through. Those are very impressive. We now have free chat. You can go ask Q&A to everyone that just demoed if you didn't manage to ask when they're there. Is there still some pizza left? There's no pizza. Don't go get more pizza. There may be drinks. Yeah, there are drinks. Okay, go chat to each other. Thank you very much.